This project really got its start when my wife and I went to see an opening of one of Ed's shows at a local gallery. What we saw were his creatures, his skeletal, bemused creatures surrounded by the detritus of a collapsed civilization.
And then you sent me some of your imagery, and I was pretty well gobsmacked. I said, my gosh, it's quite astonishing. Skeletal remains, beasts who just don't know what's happened to them and are gazing out at the camera.
The resemblance was just uncanny in the same way that Ed's creatures are standing among the collapsed, the end of the world. My bears are surviving on the end of the world as well.
You know, intellectually, we are approaching this from a very different point of view, but the images are remarkably similar.
The two of us, coming from very different perspectives, have arrived at the exact same point.
And the same alarm and the same urgency to act in some way or another. I mean, I'm not an activist, never have been. I like to think of myself as a reformer, but that is in a social sense, not a larger geopolitical sense. So, but I don't know how you feel about it.
I'm an educator at heart, a storyteller at heart, I guess. And to my mind, there's a disconnection between our ability to provide for ourselves and the fact that we're over-consuming our resource base. The search for unlimited economic growth on a planet of finite resources. That's a real problem. That's a paradox. There's no solution to that. It can't continue. My name is Stephen Gorman, and I am a photographer and a book author. Over the course of my career, I've spent time in virtually all of North America's landscapes. Southern Florida to northern Alaska to northern Greenland and everywhere in between. Kaktovik is in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which is the scene of America's longest environmental battle. It's been going on for over 40 years. There are forces that want to drill for oil. The village of Kaktovik is within the part of the refuge that they want to drill in. So the polar bears in the Kaktovik area wait for the sea ice to form so they can then use it as a platform for hunting seals at their breathing holes. When we were there in 2005, we could see the pack ice from shore. When I was there in 2017, pack ice was 250 miles offshore. So the bears have longer and longer to wait on shore without anything to eat. They're ready to get out on the ice, but the ice is not coming in. So here we have two climate refugees in the 1002 area in Kaktovik. This is Kaktovik, Alaska behind here. And these bears are feasting on the remains of the Inupiat whale hunt. The polar bears gather at the edge of the island to make use of the carcasses. So they are stripping the leftover meat and blubber and gristle from these bones. And those are the bones that you're seeing in the images. The change in the climate and the change in the environment was so obvious. These bears, their behavior had changed, everything had changed. I don't specifically go out to document climate change, but it's inescapable. It does appear in my work, absolutely, no question about it.
I'm Ed Koren. I have been a cartoonist, illustrator, artist, which is a New Yorker cartoon, in process. The caption being, "Welcome to the decade of wisdom and more medical appointments than you ever dreamed of." Most of my work is that of a contrarian, satirizing the world around me in the pages of the New Yorker magazine. It has to do with telling a story, with a narrative, with something that doesn't need much explanation. So this drawing started, as all drawings, by just a mark, and usually it's somewhere around this area in all the drawings I do. In truth, the hair stems a little bit to the 60s and 70s. afros and giant dreadlocks and huge mustaches and beards. And being hirsute has a kind of character to it. People who grew up as I did in the 50s and were about as close-shaven and kind of uninteresting visually became suddenly fascinating. And the gaze, I somehow appropriated or interiorized the dioramas at the Museum of Natural History in New York. Wonderful creatures gazing out of these giant windowed dioramas. Voila, there they are in my drawings, quite unbidden, quite unconscious. If there is a message, it's an overarching one, having to do with what we have done to animals, what they are experiencing through us. The fate of all of us is something that we are woefully unclear about and clueless about almost.
Histories, our cultural beliefs, our cultural narratives shape the way we relate to the natural world and to each other. So when I take my camera out, I'm really investigating the cultural underpinnings of our relationship to nature.
These are moments of contemplation for a viewer to be aware of very uncomfortable truths about where we are and what we're doing, and also maybe to provoke some really deep connection with other beings on Earth.
If you look objectively at the things we're up against, it's pretty grim. But we do have choices we can make in our individual and community lives. We definitely do. We can write a new narrative. We can write a new ending to this story.
You know, when people ask, are you hopeful? Do you have any hope? I think the word really is opportunity, because this is an opportunity.
To come together and come up with a new story.
Yeah.
We're not providing the end of the story, because we're asking the audience to come up with the end of the story.
That's right. It's one of those books where you choose the ending.
We can remind people where we are, how we got here, and beg the question, what now?